Y is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
I don't know what this says about a relationship, but every time I see you text me, I think Jimmy Carter died.
Grandma is gonna be one of those people. I mean, maybe not as long as my grandma, but he'll be in hospice for a smidge. He's not the immediate hospice die the next day guy.
But it's interesting the way the family phrased the he's resting, he's comfortable, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They mentioned Rosalind with it too, where I'm like, oh God, is she sick as well?
You know what I didn't know until recently, this week, that they met when they were babies.
Really?
His mother was the nurse, I think, who helped deliver Rosalind.
Oh, wow.
And he happened to, maybe he was in the nursery school there or something, and she brought him down to meet this baby. And it turned out it was Rosalind, which is kind of cute.
That's crazy. Like that, some of those, the weird connections with people, it's always so fascinating. One couple I married, I don't know if I told you, they were both from India originally, met here and realized they grew up in the same neighborhood.
It's crazy. It's like all those couples in When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
We never met, and then
it's bizarre.
It's nuts. I know. It's kind of cool though.
It does sort of make you believe that there has to be some sort of mystical force.
Exactly. See? God, he's right. All helps us be Kanye.
Exactly.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
On the plus side, I did see the Carter family tweet out, I guess his grandkids were able to go in and juggle for him, and they really enjoyed that. They posted a picture.
You know what? Whatever makes you happy.
Please, if you're on your deathbed, what would you would want jugglers?
I don't think I'd want jugglers.
Really?
Not if I couldn't talk to them and go, why are you juggling?
Well, I don't know. I feel like
I'd be entertained though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably take the jugglers. I would take anything that made me feel at a party. I just want I'm having a good time, even if I'm not.
Right, but if you're in a hospital bed, I don't know how you turn down jugglers, you know?
Well, I said I wouldn't turn them down, but I wouldn't want jugglers. I'd want rock stars to come and play at my bedside. But
well, in this scenario, you are old and you've lived a very good life. This isn't Make-A-Wish where this is the chance to meet Bret Michaels.
But I still would want that. But I'm old and I've lived a really good life. So I deserve to, I've probably partied with some rock stars by then. This trajectory we're on.
Right.
There are clearly rock stars in my future.
I just think that's a weird, you can't wave off jugglers. You got to take what they give you.
I wouldn't. I'm not turning down the jugglers. I'm just not
as they say
jugglers.
As they say, you've got to juggle with them's what brung you, you know?
Right. And if I want, they either have to be really good jugglers, crazy circus performer.
Yeah, it's not gonna be some of those idiots in the park with a stick and a
right. Or they've got to be
playing
little kids who actually don't know how to juggle but are just adorable because they're trying.
I see. Just kids beating each other.
I'm an extremist juggling fan. You got to be one end or the other. You can't be in the middle.
Right. Okay.
Be someone I know coming in and juggling for me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what is good entertainment if you are, what would you want as entertainment at that stage in your life? I mean,
I think I'd want
for you, I feel like insult comic.
I actually was going to male strippers, but that's fine. But the movie version, the Magic Mike style male strippers, I think is what I would want. Entertainment.
I would love to see that, mostly to see your family gathered by your side, wiping away tears, going, "This is what you would have wanted."
Yes. Well, it was so funny, and it's not the same thing. But when my grandma, we kept thinking she was going to die, and then she was just loved life so much. It was awesome. And I think it was whatever. But at one point they took her out of hospice and moved her to a rehab facility just temporarily.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but she never wanted to go into a facility. She lived in her own condo her whole life, and she was really mad to go to this place. Well, all of the like nurses, aides that worked there and the physical therapists, like they were all these young, really hot guys. Like they were smoking hot. And all of a sudden, she would have been just fine moving in there permanently. And it was a place you could like live. People did live there long term, but for the first time in her life, she considered it because it was all hot young men like picking her up into her wheelchair and helping her down to PT and
working
back.
out that knot on her in her shoulder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
a totally different story.
Well, and that way you sort of hope, yeah, you go doing what you love.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Huh.
This is what I feel makes sense.
I need to make up my I feel like there should be a will. Someone needs to know my plans.
I know, right?
Obviously I want my ashes pushed off the side of a countertop by a cat, but I don't know prior to passing what I want.
Right. What are those your advance directive?
Exactly.
We should probably document these on more than at least we have a recording and they can
this
prove
is true.
saying that these are the things we want and we're clearly not under duress.
Yeah, well, we're a different kind of duress.
Right.
But yeah, that would be, I'm not sure yet what I want. I don't love the take all the money and go have a party because like it's still about me just a little bit.
Right.
You don't want to be a total bummer, but you want a little bit where someone's like sad that you're not there.
Well, right. Like I want the party to be while I'm alive. Like even if I can't, like it'd be really weird, but even if I can't fully enjoy it, put me on my chaise.
Right.
Dance around me.
And yes, have hot guys dancing around you while you're in a wheelchair, just staring off to middle distance.
No, I'm gonna lay in my tantra chair.
Just wait, what you saying? What you say? Make them wrestle? What is that?
Yes.
No.
Exactly. And then I want some sort of I can do a whole Roman thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm not gonna have them killed or anything, but
right. You want to be carried in on some sort of skiff or litter?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, everything I'm gonna do is gonna be like that. It's all gonna be Cleopatra. Once we make it big time, all my entrances are gonna either be Bianca Jagger style or Cleopatra. It's gonna be one or the other.
Right. And never on time is the vibe I'm getting.
I know, but that's not me because I actually do time.
Interesting.
I don't like to be late. It stresses me out. So I might have to do that, but promptly, because also if I'm late to my own party, I miss part of the party. This is why I hate surprise parties. I think surprise parties are the worst thing you can do for someone.
Because it's look at all this fun we were having before you showed up.
Right. Like all the food's picked over, the booze is half gone. You don't get to pick what you're wearing. So you don't even know what it's looking like. And so and everyone's been standing around bored waiting for you. So they're really drunk and full. So by the time you get there, they're like, oh yeah, you're here. Well, we'll just carry on as we were.
I think you need new friends, not hating surprise parties.
Well, no one's ever thrown me a surprise party. I've just been on the other side of surprise parties. And
you're the one drinking all the booze and eating all the hors d'oeuvres. I see. Exactly. Okay.
But it's weird. I think it's a weird concept.
It is. It's not. Yeah.
Like, I think it's different if you take the person and like sort of bait and switch where you're going. So they're already knowing that they're going to be doing something of note. And they're dressed
that the game
up,
is afoot in one way or another.
Right. But even then, what if I'm in the mood to just go out with like my man? I don't want a million people there. Like, then it's like, oh, wow, this is great. Why are you people here?
You just want to go home and have pizza rolls. And you're like, why do I have to do this?
Yes.
Surprise. Quick question. Do we still get pizza rolls?
Right.
Yeah.
Every party I ever have has pizza rolls.
I'm finding in the museum, we get occasionally a child will come in who loves, say, Doctor Who or loves sci-fi, and it's just refreshing that they have this, they get it, and can watch effectively like a long form film.
Yeah.
When I was their age, I used to basically get the newspapers in the evening, the local newspaper, and be looking for a late night film. The sort of film that was in one of my movie books, because there was no VHS, no nothing like that. And if something came on at night, it'd stay up late at night, and like The Outer Limits used to be on at 1 a.m. over here in the UK.
And how can that go wrong?
Well, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd stay up, to watch that, and I'd be like, just my eyes would be going, but I just special, And I think now it's like, if it's not instant, it's really wow. It's a definite change. I've noticed that. So the main people who come in here, I would say, are 40s to 60s, who are the ones who absolutely, it's that generational thing. We watch the same things. There wasn't streaming, so we all watched the same, especially in the UK, there wasn't many channels. So you had 2 or 3 channels. So you watched the same thing. So when remember V came on in 1981 or whatever it was like, whoa, everyone in the playground was V, bloody hell. So you put something in here, and everybody, like the Day of the Triffids was a big thing, and I've just restored a Triffid from that. The producer of the show visited the museum and donated a Triffid, which is fantastic, and I've restored the Triffid, and it's just, people come in and they go, oh God, the Triffids, whereas kids come in and it's hard to find any 2 children that have watched the same thing.
Definitely.
And that's the difference. But you get some who come in whose parents have browbeaten them. You will watch this. It's like me with Flash Gordon. I've got a Flash Gordon helmet in here from 1940. And when Star Wars came out in the 70s, my dad in the war had watched Flash Gordon at the local cinema when they were being bombed on the coast in the UK here. And when the BBC were desperate to put some science fiction on when Star Wars came out. So mid-70s, 77, whatever it was, every Saturday, holiday mornings, Flash Gordon was put on because it cost them very little. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter that it was all hokey. It was wonderful, so I've got this, however much, 40-year-old sci-fi I was watching. And so I now have that love that my dad had for it,
So how did you make that jump from aficionado and lover of the genre and all the different elements of it to collector?
Oh, blimey.
Because obviously this has got to be a different time, because these pieces now are astronomical.
Yeah, they are astronomical. I'm not astronomically wealthy. I am an artist and I'm passionate about what I do. I've just been diagnosed with ADHD, which is why I realized it's sort of like giving me this deep focus, which I've always wondered. I haven't wondered, I've just taken for granted. But when I got into things, it's that special interest, the autistic special interest. I had a special interest in sci-fi. And then in bands like Rush and Yes, where you could sort of really deeply get into something, and I think it started with action figures. Really, it was that initially it was Mego figures, and that chance you could have of those stories you loved, you could have them. You could have these little galleries, even though they were really awful figures. I mean, I love them, but awful, really.
Right.
God bless them. And then the Star Wars figures, of course, I was the right age. So I was 7 when they came out, and they were like mind expanding. And so I think I got into that. I'm part librarian, I've got this archival side to my nature, and I loved the magazines, and I would cut up magazines and make my own film magazines and draw my own comics. And then I went to see the Doctor Who exhibition. I don't know if you want to save this for the show, or has this been recorded now?
I'm recording it. I figure we'll take what
basically,
we need.
1975, I went to see, there was a seaside resort called Blackpool in the UK. It was made for Victorians, to go on the holidays. The trains came out there and they went in the mass and they just sat in the sun, and there was like promenade and everything. Classic seaside, Victorian seaside. Well, by the 70s, the BBC had opened the Doctor Who exhibition there. Now, this was quite unusual because you had things from the show, literally that had maybe been on screen a month ago, were now in this museum exhibition. And you were like on a bright summer's day, you would then go on the promenade, you'd go downstairs, radiophonic sound, and colored lights, and you were swamped in atmosphere. It was absolutely, I mean, for a child, it was just ridiculous. And there were the things you'd seen on the telly, and there was no books, there was no magazines, there was nothing. So it was all in your mind. And I can only liken it to Santa Claus when you're 5, you know, sort of the reality fiction, just bloody wonderful, really, you know, heady stuff. And I remember that day I went twice, and it was on for many years, but my dad only took me twice. And I just want to do something like that. It was that sort of, these are the real things. These are the things. They are actually, I've just been, you know, Doctor Who, you see, was the thing that got to me and a lot of people, my generation, I guess, and that you had to come in on Friday afternoon, sports was on, which I hated, waited for that to finish, Doctor Who. And everybody was, you know, a few of us, we just loved it. We get our Marvel comics from the newsagent, devour those. And then it was Doctor Who, your one-stop bit of science fiction. And if you're lucky, you'd get a B movie on in midnight, you know, sometime, you know, and it was just precious. And I think that's probably, and I think that desire to sort of relive all that memory, and then the chance to get real bits from it came up in the 90s. I was poverty stricken. I came from a very poor background. So never thought I'd ever own anything from it. By this point, though, I was sculpting and making my own things, and started teaching. And as I sort of got to my 30s, I had a salary. So then I could start to buy a few bits and bobs. And I thought it was just, I remember the first thing, I sold a motorcycle, which I used to get to work on, to buy a dress from Doctor Who, because it was an original dress. So it was like, I sold the ultimate symbol of masculinity to buy a dress. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still got it. It's in the museum, and it was a bit of magic for me. And it progressed. Now, nowadays, in the last 10 years, dealers came into the scene, the prop dealer market, and the prices went through the roof. At one time, it was the BBC auctioned huge swathes of wardrobe off, and fans like myself and collectors, we'd be able to swap them between each other, you know, and they were sold at what I class as sensible prices, you know, prices that you could afford on it without being, you know, the CEO of a major company or something. You know, if you were a teacher, you could afford one or two of them. I got my Cyberman before the new series came back, when Doctor Who was in the doldrums, and I paid about £2,000 for it, which was a lot of money, but I paid for it over 2 years to get it, you know?
Yeah.
But now that would be worth, I couldn't afford it. I can't do it.
Yeah. And that's, it's interesting. I wonder how much of sort of our generation's love of this stuff comes from the fact that it wasn't instantly available, that you could not just press a button. You had to live with the idea of what would this be? What's this poster promising us?
Yes, totally. I think, you know something, you're just hitting the nail on the head. The movie poster was a powerful thing. There was the movie poster and also the genre magazines. You'd get like in Doctor Who, Doctor Who wasn't available. It never was repeated for various reasons. The BBC couldn't repeat it. You had to pay everybody again. There was a royal charter from the Queen that said basically the BBC, you are not paying for repeats. The public are paying for new content. So you're not bloody well repeating things, you're making new content. So it was only when the VHS came in the late 80s, you could see these things again. So you made do with black and white photos. And of course, a lot of these photos made things look amazing.
Right.
Movie posters made things look amazing. You know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Right. Escape from New York.
I was going to say Drew Struzan.
Yeah.
Was a master of
Escape from New York, where the Statue of Liberty's head and Kurt Russell and Donald Pleasance running down the street. That never happens in the film, does it? But what a poster. I remember seeing that poster and thinking, that is a film to see. I want to see that. And I think I always say the curse of the photo montage now. You know, everything's just like heads photoshopped in. And all those beautiful artworks and posters they did. It was a promised land. And I think movie props were just unheard of. I mean, growing up, I unheard of to have something from Doctor Who, from anything. It was like the magic veil, you know, it was like going through a different dimension. Nowadays, I find myself now with the museum, I can't, you know, there's big prices go for things. I've got some lovely pieces. People donate things because of the museum. You get people who, I've had a lovely chap who's now a bit older and he worked on many films you'll know, donated his collection because he's gone into sheltered housing and he could have sold it, but he said, no, I want people to see it. And I'm incredibly grateful because it means I've got pieces from Blade Runner, Star Wars, aliens, which I would never, ever have been able to afford, because there's a dealer auction culture, and it's tough to integrate when you're not on that sort of money. I've had the director of Doctor Who, one of my favorite directors, Graham Harper, he's donated the lead Cyberman head. He came and visited the museum, looked what I was doing and donated it. I mean, I couldn't afford that.
Right.
And I think he knew that. And I think he just thought, what I'm doing, actually, for me, they shouldn't be in collectors' rooms are great, but they're for a person. For me, this is open all year round. I mean, I've only had 2 people in today. It's winter, it's quiet, but I'm here. I write stuff, I do other things, I draw, do all sorts of things, but I'm here. If you want to come and visit the stuff, it's open all year round. Like the BBC exhibition was, I knew at a weekend I could visit these really important, nostalgic, I call it shared culture, because it's shared cultural history. It's more interesting to me. I went to the Louvre, I went to Paris and saw various famous artists. Van Gogh, my wife loves Van Gogh. I just went, to me, I'd rather see an axon from Doctor Who or, a bit of one of Blade, a newspaper from Blade Runner. It's far more interesting to me personally, because these are things that resonate with me and my life. And I think that's what little music, but it's always like the art establishment kind of looks down on pop culture, true pop. Right. I don't mean fine art pop culture. I don't mean Andy Warhol. I mean sort of, and I think there's a look down. There's always been this stuffy nose look at it. And yet I think for most people, this stuff means a lot to them. For me, it's the time when my parents were still alive, where we sat and watched television together, where we chatted about films, and it brings all that back as well. It's a very special time.
It's got that personal connection as well as a connection to a greater thing that brings people together. Have you always, obviously, you get your first dress, and that's not, one dress does not a museum make.
No.
As you right, as much as one would wish. As you're kind of building this collection, did you always have in the back of your mind this idea of like, I want to share this with people. I want to have my enthusiasm, my love of this stuff get out there.
I actually did. And I think I had a heartbreaking moment when I hit 40. I'm 53 very soon. When I hit 40, I realized I had my collection, which was quite nice, but there was still a very large Doctor Who exhibition open in the UK at that time. And I went down to see it in Wales, and I came back and I thought, my collection's nice, but my God, it's nothing,
right.
It's but a flea on the back of the dog, And it was also, I thought, I always thought, right, if I got the chance to do this, I could make a damn good job of it, because I would research things in a way that maybe the people who work at the BBC, they're just employees, this week's job, make a music, display this, with all the best will in the world. And the exhibitions I'd go to, you'd see like a display, and it would have Jadoon, and then it would have a picture of the Jadoon standing next to a Jadoon. It's like, well, I get it, it's a Jadoon. I already know it's a bloody Jadoon, but I want more about that. I want the history of it. Where's it come from? Where's it? So I knew I would give that to it. I knew I would do that side of the thing. But when I hit 40, basically, I just thought, I don't own my own house yet. How on earth am I gonna, there's no way. I thought, really? And I even got to the point when I was about 45 where I was going to sell the whole lot, because I thought, right, this is just, I've seen it. They've all become objects. I've seen them. And unless I can do something with them, to me, it's no different to having, I don't know, a collection of pots, a collection of this, as wonderful as they were. I started, we had children a bit later on, and I thought, I can't justify this. And literally, as I was about to sell it, stuff was on eBay.
Wow.
We put an offer in on this house. My wife got it, and this was a wreck. It's a 4-story Georgian, 300-year-old Georgian stone townhouse. I would have been sitting in water 7 years ago. I'd have been in waders. There would have been no ceiling. Would have been saying hello to my wife upstairs, and it would have been, and my dog would have been woofing down at us, because there was just a wreck. And I'd done a bit of building when I was in my early 20s, and I thought, this is it. And it's in a marketplace, so you can open a business there. See, that's the thing. You can't just have a property. It's got to be somewhere you can actually legally bloody open.
Right. Yeah.
There's this, when you think about these things, people sometimes say, I'm going to make a museum. And I think, go for it, buddy. Because it's not straightforward. You've got to, there's a lot to it.
And especially if you're trying to live above the shop, as it were.
Yeah.
So How has, I mean, from watching the thing on Netflix, which if folks haven't seen it is so worth checking out, because again, I think just in the 15-20 minutes we've been talking and in this thing, the passion comes through, which is always the thing that like you hope, and I think it's got to be one of the reasons people are donating their collections to the museums, because they know it's going to someone who will be as ecstatic as they are with these pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
And and it's so interesting to see the variety of stuff you've got. We've talked mostly about the Doctor Who stuff, but you have an ape head from Planet, of the.
Right, what I've got, I'm going to be clear here.
Yes.
The ape head, I have. I've got a complete costume from beneath the Planet of the Apes, right? I've got a prosthetic from the original film, which is not actually out on display yet. I then got a complete Tim Burton with head chimp suit. Tim Burton will not say too much.
Yeah, we'll just acknowledge it's there.
We'll just say beautiful design. Planet of the Apes, just for anybody who's interested in this, I think should never, ever, ever have had a sequel. They should have stopped when Charlton Heston stood on that beach and just walked away, because it was probably the greatest, one of the great movie endings of all time. Anyway, I digress, and I'll shut up. But what I do, the head itself was made by a former student of mine. So the actual costumes, basically, I was going to sculpt it myself. I didn't know I was going to end up with a prosthetic later on, but a girl called Dolly Hope, who I'd taught in my class when she was this big, has gone into prosthetics, and she needed a final project for a degree. And I was going to sculpt it. And she said, what have you got any? And eventually I said, you've seen Planet of the Apes prosthetics, haven't you? Somebody stood to it. No. And I went, what? You're studying bloody prosthetic design and you ain't seen that. I'm moderating my language here very carefully.
Right.
Go and see bloody Planet of the Apes. Anyway, she saw it. She went, what? And I went, yes, what? Yeah, that's right. So she said, can I do? I went, yes, do the ape head for me, please. So basically, Dolly did it and she followed the ways that they did the original, but obviously cast it in silicon as opposed to rubber, and punched all the hair through and everything. So that was made by Dolly, and it was lovely because it's really special because it was made by a former pupil who remembers my art class when she was like 10, 11.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. But then I ended up with the Burton one. The Burton one's a great suit. It's just the film. Anyway, and but then I've ended up with a very old prosthetic, which is going to go out very soon. And you wouldn't actually be able to put it on, like most of these things, they're the rubber pieces, you cannot actually put them on. You don't want to touch them. You want to moisturize them, seal the moisture in, and seal it and seal it and seal it, and then never, ever touch it again. That's part of what you have to do. Sorry, have I answered your question there? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're in the vicinity.
Yeah.
But like and that's the other thing too. So many of these things are not made to last for, they have to hold up on screen for one day of shooting, maybe a week if you're really, really lucky. They're not made for forever. No. Preserving this collection is the preservation of it just to show it to people, but then there's the preservation to keep this thing together. And you often see how things degrade over time. Yeah. What kind of, and especially, you said a basement that had some water in it. You're dealing with a different element that would make my heart stop every time I turn that light on to go down the stairs.
The cellar's, sorry.
No, how do you preserve this stuff to make sure people can see it and it can
the cellar is actually a blessing. Okay, it took me 2 years from 2015 to 2017 to get rid of all the water. When I say that, you think it's half underground, half ground level. So you come in at ground level, but then it goes underground. You would think the water would be from one, a broken pipe here, a broken pipe there. No. 7 places. Over about probably a century, water had seeped in. So you found one place. And eventually we got everywhere. We'd gone around the back of the house, the front of the house, everywhere. And we knew we had to get rid of that water. There was no way we could, do this without water coming in. Finally, we thought we'd done it. Water the next morning was coming in. I was like, where's the water coming from? And it turned out to be my washing machine, which was a year old. Just to add insult to injury, it was dripping a tiny bit out the pipe, straight down through the back wall. So once that was done, that was that. It was. Now that doesn't mean it's not damp, but the beauty of it is I have 3 dehumidifiers running at all time. It's cool. because it was a cellar and it was used for storage, which is absolutely perfect for storing because it stays constant temperature. It's pretty constant, you know. I mean, we've had snow here. To be honest, it just goes into high. It's pretty good. And the summers where it was really hot this year for us here, it was brilliant. Cool. So the expansion and contraction. Now you compare that to the BBC's giant exhibition that had been there, called the Doctor Who Experience in Cardiff. It was a huge aircraft hangar, and it was there from about 2011 to 2017. A lot of the props deteriorated in there because, being a metal hangar, the temperature, nighttime freezing, summertime boiling, and a lot of the stuff. I spoke to a chap, Mike Tucker, who visited, who helped run it, worked on Doctor Who. He visited the museum recently, lovely to speak to him. And he said, no, he said they had loads of problems in there because, au contraire, it wasn't a state-of-the-art building at all. It was huge. So in a way, the actual cellar is a bonus. This stone is just bloody great, absolutely fantastic. And then in terms of preservation, the key thing is, you when you've got old rubber, some of this rubber's like from the 70s, you know, you really have to stop touching it and handling it and moving it. So the key thing is you either put it on a mannequin or fill it with foam if you can. It's great. Fill up expandable foam if you can without distorting it. And you fill it with resin, you use glycerin, you soak it, so you get it all soaked up, and then you seal it in, because it's what happens with foam rubber particularly is once it dries, it just literally turns to dust. It's great fun, not. And you've got to just, you know, I've got a head here. I don't know if you can see through there. You might just be able to see. Let me have a quick look.
Yeah.
Don't know if you can see. Yeah, there's a head there. That's one of my Kevin Bacon's heads from Hollow Man.
Okay.
And it's quite shriveled.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite shriveled. But what I've done is that's sealed. So now that'll just sit there. But it's all there, but it's cracked. But for 20 years, that was just allowed. Probably it was in the States. It was probably allowed to just shrivel, contract, shrivel, contract, shrivel, contract. But it's okay. Next to it is a Morlock from 1960. That was bits of pasta. All I can say was like a plate of pasta bits. And I had to just, it was like a jigsaw. Quite a lot of resculpting by myself, but I'm always honest about that. It's a last resort. I sculpt. Thankfully, I can sculpt, but it's a last resort. You only do that when you have to, and there are bits in here which I've had to do that. But you've got to weigh up. Are you? There's a Davros from Doctor Who. Bits of his face are left. So what I managed to do is get a fiberglass cast of from the original mold, and then I've pieced the surviving pieces around it, moisturized them, sealed them, so you can see what's left. And the actual cast, the grey cast, shows the rest of the form. That's a nice way of showing what's left. So it's sometimes you'll try and repair it and make it look like it was, but I'll only do that if you're looking at 3/4 needs to be there, I would say, to do that, because otherwise you're ending up sculpting a mask yourself. And people are looking at your sculpting with bits in. Yeah. That's it. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes if I'm sculpting a bit, I won't paint it. I'll leave it unpainted so you can see the original pieces. And there's the bit I've stuck in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of acknowledging that there has been preservation done to it, and here are the spots. Yeah, it makes complete sense. How often are you getting new pieces in? I mean, you said you've got stuff that you're working on to get out.
Yeah. How fast am I doing them,
or just how often are you getting stuff in where people are contacting you saying, hey, I've got this thing?
Yeah, I'm getting probably now several pieces a year. It's difficult to say. Last year I had an amazing year because I had an actress called Sophie Aldred who plays Ace in Doctor Who. She's visited us a few times. She's become a good friend of ours now. Lovely woman and great ambassador for Doctor Who, but just a lovely person. She's just got time for everybody. She's donated bits of her costume that she kept. You know, I mean, I didn't ask. She just thought these need to go in here, and they're lovely. And what I'll do with those is I'll put the pieces around next to the most appropriate story they're from. So I get pieces like that. In terms of, it's difficult to quantify. Last year I had a good year, probably about 6 or 7 pieces. Are
you still purchasing stuff?
Less so now because of space. Yeah, I mean, as well, I quit teaching. So now I'm very much... I work 2 days a week with people with autism. I do art, sort of like kind of like education, occupational therapy. I do 2 days of that. And then I'm in the museum, and then I have a Patreon which is brilliant. And I do magazines for Patreon, which I should have an example to show you. And I do these really quality magazines with people who subscribe, and it's a deep dive into one object. So I'll take one prop and I'll go into this film it was in, where it was, what happened to it afterwards. You know, it's sort of like a different way of building a history of sci-fi. So it's like, you know, I've read the history. I love sci-fi movies. I mean, I grew up with it and Doctor Who. So I'm writing like an alternative guide, but through an object, which I just think is a different way of coming at it. You know, who made the object? You know, it's always about actors and directors, you know, and sometimes I just think there's a lot of other people put a lot of work in. It's nice to just go at it from a different viewpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you just have props, or do you go into call sheets, script pages,
I'll go
designs, sketches,
anything you want. With Doctor Who, I mean, I don't know if you can see on the wall behind me here. These are animation cells from the 90s. These are from Fantastic Four and X-Men.
Okay.
So I've got some animation. I mean, I love drawing and love animation. I've taught animation, so I like all that sort of thing. But yeah, I've got script page. I mean, the original idea of the museum was to try. There was about 140 odd original Doctor Who stories. I'm not a big fan, particularly of the new show, because they changed too many parameters for me as an old fart. That it was just a bit. I knew what I liked. Doctor Who to me was Sherlock Holmes, Quatermass, and a bit of H.G. Wells. That was Doctor Who. They've changed him into more of a. It's like a fashion model at the minute. It's not quite my field.
Right.
It's just a different audience. It's not written with me in mind.
Right.
It's absolutely fine. It's a good show. It's just not quite to my taste. But so that made it easier, because what I thought is, right, the BBC, they deal with the new show now. That's their baby. I will try and do something for the old people, and we'll try and do something. So I wanted to get, what my aim is to get an object from every story. Now, I'll never do it because these things just don't exist. But I've got about, I'm getting up to 80 stories, I think, represented with an object. Now, that could be a script page, or it could be a cufflink, or it could be a monster, or it could be a page of published book art that was part of the original range. It's basically things that represent the show that are published or screen made. You know, largely I prefer the screen made stuff, but I've got an artist, Andrew Scaletta and Colin Howard, two big Doctor Who artists. I've managed to get original pieces from them, and they are, you know, in the museum too. And I think it just adds a variety to what people see. And it's nice to see good hand painted art in an age of digital art. I love hand painted. It goes back to movie posters, doesn't it? It's nice to see hand painted artwork, you know.
It seems all the things there is that hand element to it, the costumes, the idea that this actor wore this was on set that day that they shot this thing. Like there's a very tactile sensation, it seems, to everything you've got there, which is certainly lost when you get digital with all of that. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think there's that idea of like, what would the 8-year-old you think of what you've done with your life, you know, when you're getting incredibly metaphysical and what does this all mean? I would assume the 8-year-old you would be completely ecstatic that this place exists and that you get to sit there every day.
Yeah, I think blown away. I mean, I was an only child, so I lived very much, and now I realize I was ADHD, so I was very much in the deep thought processes that follow that. Mm-hmm. I used to go to school, and we had a couple of us at that time at school, you know, as well. You know, Marvel comics, sci-fi films. It was very nerdy stuff. It was, you know, I wasn't into football, which was still is this sort of male bastion of what a bloke is. You're a bloke if you're into footy. Well, I'm not into football. My dad actually managed a football team. I had absolutely bugger all interest. I'm not kidding. I used to go to the football match on a Saturday with my dad and take my Star Wars figures, and he must have been weeping because I'd be sitting at the side playing with Han Solo, you know. And at the end of the day, I think it would be amazing. That would be one of the most amazing things to do, would be to take that little lad and take him around the museum. There's actually a monster in here which is on loan from the guy, from Mike Tucker, from who worked on Doctor Who, and it's a Zygon called Broton, which is their most incredible costume. It's stunning, from 1975. It was in Blackpool in 1975, and I remember it as a child. I remember going and it was up here, and there was somebody in it, and I was terrified of it. It's all full of suckers. Incredible costume for the time, and I wouldn't shake its hand, I remember. And my daughter, who's grown up totally seeing all this all the time.
Right.
When she saw Broton in the museum, the Zygon, even she went, I don't like that one. And I went, nah, I get it. Especially when you're low down here. I mean, to me, it is just a big rubber costume because I've hauled him, up from London, and I've had him in some awkward angles getting through doors. And
You've
things.
had times with each other. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Museum of Classic Sci-Fi in Allendale, England is currently open Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Friday. For hours and much more information, check out their website, museumofclassicsci-fi.com.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters, located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?